What's going on, everybody? My name is C4, and like many of you, I'm struggling to cope with the fact that football is over. So I felt like this week, ahead of some Cardinals playoff runs, some Hollywood Tech Honey Hunters NCAA, some rebuilds, it's best here on this Tuesday to just start with a mock draft. Now that the first round has been set, we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs, a fan base that is starving for a Super Bowl title, win again, because they just keep. When are we collectively, as 31 other fan bases, going to come together and hate the Chiefs the same way we hate the Brady Belichick Patriots? Huh? I've already been on that bandwagon since last year's Super Bowl, but it feels like more people hate Taylor Swift than they hate the success of the Chiefs. And let's be honest, you know, the Taylor Swift stuff, it's getting blown out of proportion. I think I've seen enough people say, like, their daughters and all these people that don't care about football are into football now a little bit because of Taylor Swift. That's good. I think the big problem with Taylor Swift is like the engagement farming that's all over social media by all these networks, which obviously it's money. But like that is what makes Taylor Swift, the idea of this Taylor Swift Chiefs Travis Kelce, the thing that makes it the most annoying, in my opinion, that I hate, is all the engagement farming that's stuffed down our throats. Her at the games, great for the game. More eyes on the product. The engagement farming. If we could take that hatred for Taylor Swift and the Chiefs and just apply it to the success of the Chiefs, I think the world's going to be a much better place with 31 teams rooting for one team's downfall again. And then you have the Niners. I'm not going to lie, this is my 5th time recording this because I end up going like a 4-minute rant about the Niners. Let's just say congrats on being the first place losers of the Super Bowl, and that couldn't happen to a more deserving fan base that I've seen over the past 14, 15 months. You suck like the rest of us. You couldn't get the job done. Welcome to not being good enough, huh? That is an absolute team that was much like the South Park episode of California and San Francisco, sniffing their own farts for way too long. They got humbled. No team needed to be humbled more than the San Francisco 49ers. And now you suck like the rest of us. You couldn't get it done. Back of the line. So without further ado, to cope with no more football, now that the first round has been set, let's get into a little mock draft here. And I mean, mock drafts are going to look weird until the gigantic trade that happens between the Chicago Bears and moving on from Justin Fields. Because there's probably going to be a team that I might have getting a quarterback that won't need one because they're going to get Justin Fields. And what kind of compensation are they going to get for Justin Fields? That may be the biggest question. Is he going to get a first-round pick? I'm going to guess you might get a second that could conditionally turn into a first at some point. But understanding that that's likely over, you got to start the mock draft. Caleb Williams at pick number 1. I can't sit here for 3 minutes to tell you why this pick's going to happen, why it should happen, why it shouldn't happen. It's been beaten to death at this point. They're going to go with Caleb Williams. I think the biggest reason why is you get a high-ceiling quarterback that's a more modern quarterback that is on a cost-controlled contract versus Justin Fields, so you got to pay sooner than later. You just get more time to evaluate Caleb Williams, the team, whether or not he is a franchise quarterback, to build a team around that rookie quarterback contract. That is why the Bears are going to make that move. Commanders at pick 2. I've seen Jaden Daniels. I think there's actually the surprise here at 2, just to throw it out there, would be, what if they want to give Sam Howell another year? There was some good. There was the good, the bad, the ugly of Sam Howell last year. But if they are not absolutely in love with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, I would 100%, and I'm going to go Drake May here. I'll just put that in right now because I'm a big fan of Drake May. I've watched dozens of North Carolina games. Dozens. I've probably seen maybe 15, 20 games. Drake May, over the last 2.5 years, I've won a lot of money with Drake May, North Carolina. Pretty much any time they've ever gone down in games, and they become an underdog on the money line, live line, Drake May has been solid for me, been very consistent for me. I'd be annoyed to see him laying up in the division. But what if someone that is, on the outside looking in, what if you have a team like Atlanta, New York, Minnesota, Denver, Vegas Raiders that wants to trade up here and gives you an insane offer, too good to pass up? If you're the Commanders and you can get 3 first-round picks and roll with Sam Howell again, do you? Do you entertain that idea? I think I'd love to see that, just to absolutely change things up here. But for me, I think Drake May has more than enough desirable traits for a franchise quarterback. Has the arm talent, dual threat, prototypical size. You can work on the footwork. Decision-making's not too bad. Made some big-time clutch throws for North Carolina. I think you go Drake May at 2, and you don't look back. Pick number 3 with the New England Patriots, Gerard Mayo era. We're going to start with Jaden Daniels. I think for me, there is a decent gap between Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then Jaden Daniels. I firmly have May and Caleb in the tier 1, and then tier 2 starts with Jaden Daniels. But you all know that the draft never goes by best player. It goes by need. And need at quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who I remember watching him ball out as, I don't know if he was a true freshman. Might have been a redshirt. Either way, at Arizona State, looked good. Things did not end well at Arizona State. Remember, there was like a video of like his teammates like trashing his locker room when he dipped to LSU. And yes, maybe had a much better supporting cast than the first two quarterbacks at LSU. Malik Neighbors. You got first rounder. He's top 5 talent probably in this year's draft class. You have Brian Thomas, who's going to be a first round pick. You have Jason Taylor's kid at tight end. That's probably going to be one of the top tight ends next year. Him and the Loveland out of Michigan. Probably 1 and 2 and somewhere in that range. Pretty solid offensive line. But supporting cast or not, Jaden Daniels does look like he could be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think for the Patriots, you might like a more sure thing. I also think for the Patriots, if you're committing to a rebuild, another team that could get an absolute haul by someone that's maybe more in love with Jaden Daniels. Get a couple first-round picks to move back into the 10s and punt on a quarterback, or maybe go and try to attack a veteran quarterback in the open market, and then look at next year. Maybe look at Shedeur Sanders or Texas's quarterback next year, right? You don't have to Quinn Ewers. You know, if you like the idea of that and just adding more picks to commit to this rebuild, I think it's very likely. Not very likely. I think it's going to be the Patriots. I think the Patriots will be the more likely between them and the Commanders to accept a gigantic offer to get out of this quarterback spot. But I'd be very surprised if pick 1, 2, and 3 are not 3 quarterbacks. And that is how we're going with it. So that means at pick 4, the Arizona Cardinals might get pound for pound the best player in this draft in Marvin Harrison Jr., going in a wide receiver 1 to help assist Kyler Murray and that gigantic contract that he's sitting on. Give him some more talent. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. walks into that Cardinals room as wide receiver 1. We have the Chargers at pick 5. Here's where I get a little different. Maybe the positional value, not the best. But I think looking at the Chargers roster, corner is their biggest need. And I am starting to come along with the consensus. You're seeing it with like Dane Brugler. You're seeing it with Daniel Jeremiah that Terrion Arnold is corner 1 in this draft class. I do think for all the corners, Arnold included, Arnold, Wiggins, DeJean coming off the injury, Mitchell, Kool-Aid McKinstry. This order is not set. I think that this, out of any position in this year's draft, can fluctuate the most after we see these guys test. You don't want to say, the combine, it's not the biggest part. It's a piece. It's a piece of the puzzle in trying to determine. But I think the athletes that can separate themselves from these guys that all have really solid tape, it's going to shuffle a little bit. Like if Arnold runs, he's converted safety. If he's just to say he runs 4.55 and Nate Wiggins runs a 4.3, just throw that out there. These are just numbers. I can see Nate Wiggins be the first corner. If DeJean's going to test pretty well athletically, straight line speed that is. People are a little worried about the sideline to sideline, the agility. I don't personally know. Quinion Mitchell should test fast. He was on Bruce Feldman's freak list. Kool-Aid McKinstry has questions about athleticism a little bit. But, if let's just say if between Arnold down to McKinstry, if one of these guys goes, holy shit, where did that come from? I think there is still that discussion to be had. But for my money right now, Arnold, with the safety background, what he's put at Alabama last year, kind of selling high on his stock, playing his best football late when he's going to the draft, I think it's going to help him out, and the Chargers need corner help desperately. That would be an absolute dog. Pick 6, we the New York Giants. Very similar to Marvin Harrison going to the Cardinals. I'm going to have Malik Neighbors go to the New York Giants. You got Daniel Jones' contract. That's what makes it really, really weird for the Giants. I think if Jaden Daniels, for example, falls to the Giants at 6, they might pick him. I just don't think they're going to be able to justify being aggressive enough to trade up to get a quarterback. So at this point, if you're stuck with Daniel Jones, get him the most help you can, and or put the pieces in place for whatever you can get out of him and go to a new quarterback. They have the supporting cast in place. I think Malik Neighbors, who is just an elite deep threat in this year's draft class, probably the best deep threat out of the group here of wide receivers. I mean, hell, the other one arguably might be his teammate in Brian Thomas. That is a big-time help for the Giants, who desperately need that proven, legitimate wide receiver 1. Pick 7, we have the Tennessee Titans. And forever, I've been having them go tackle. And I love Joe Alt, but I think let's go playmaker here. And I'm going to have them get Rome Odunze. We did this in our last realistic rebuild. The Tennessee Titans had him get Odunze. 6'4", deep threat, physical, jump ball, can run routes. He just, there's not a lot of weaknesses to Odunze's game. I think the top 3 wide receivers in this class, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, those guys there all have wide receiver 1 on their respected teams within the top 10 as rookies. And anytime you have that opportunity, that is what sells this league. If you're Tennessee, your best weapon is DeAndre Hopkins. If you are going to be committing to Will Levis, get him his partner. Get him his partner in crime as soon as you possibly can. Second round, sell out to kind of build up that offensive line. But in the first round, when you have an opportunity to get a guy that's going to walk in and be wide receiver 1, and he'd probably be wide receiver 2 with Hopkins there, but you get Hopkins to mentor him. That is an outstanding situation to help out Will Levis. But, there's going to be just as many people that have this as the Cincinnati Bengals situation when they drafted Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. Could that be similar to the Tennessee Titans versus getting a tackle to protect Will Levis is more important than having a weapon for him to throw? Valid. But I think just to switch it up a little bit, I think getting a true future wide receiver 1 weapon to pair with Will Levis, that is where I would go here at 7, and then sell out for the offensive line in the later rounds. Pick 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who I'm going to have them improve their pass rush and get the biggest dog in this year's draft class, Dallas Turner out of Alabama. Atlanta's pass rush was a little bit better last year after being terrible for 4 or 5 years straight, but I think you still continue to throw assets at that pass rush until you figure it all out. And Dallas Turner, while not a Will Anderson, closest to a Will Anderson prospect, and I think that is just an easy pick. I mean, Atlanta at 8, I think they're going to be very happy with multiple options that they can go, but I have Dallas Turner as my top edge rusher in this year's class. I think there's some nice value there. Speaking of edge rushers, for the Chicago Bears at 9, you pay big money for Montez Sweat. Now it is time to get a cost-controlled edge rusher after getting Caleb Williams, and I'm going to go Jared Verse out of Florida State. A little bit of a down year. Probably would have felt better about his draft stock if he declared last year. But I think he's going to test well. Was high on Bruce Feldman's freak list. You pair that with Montez Sweat, who is an absolute athletic freak. I think that's going to give the Chicago Bears a little bit of kick in the ass, a little bit of rejuvenation for that monsters of the midway tag that they've lost on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you get a balance here. 2 top 10 picks, go 1 on offense, 1 on defense. And I think Jared Verse and Montez Sweat will be a hell of a pass rush. The Jets at pick 10. It's easy. They're running this one up. They're getting the top tackle in this year's draft class, in my opinion, in Joe Alt. Protect Aaron Rodgers. Enough said. The Minnesota Vikings at pick 11. We're going to have them go pass rusher. This is one that I could see him. He has medical concerns, slight medical concerns. It's not a gigantic red flag, but there's a medical that needs to be answered for. I don't think he's going to be a freak athlete. I think if I'm just looking at straight edge rushers, I think Chop Robinson here is going to be a better athlete. I think Chris Braswell is probably going to be a better athlete. And those guys tend to just get overdrafted because of their athletic profile. But Latu is the highest scoring player ever in the history of PFF. His production at UCLA is ridiculous. And you know what? There does come a certain point where, yes, you want athletes, especially when you're picking close to the top 10. The freak athletes, those are the sexier picks. But guys that are just like technicians, you don't lose that. That you might, let's just make an argument. Chalk Robinson might be a freak athlete. One of those freak Penn State, Micah Parson build athletes, right? If they don't technically put it all together, they could get by in college on their athleticism. So then you get stuck with a guy that might be like a rotational pass rusher. But someone like Latu that doesn't get by on their athleticism, gets by on their length, gets by on their technique, gets by on their motor. For every Derek Barnett that doesn't work out, you get those guys that are just always going to be good. Because even when they get old, even when they start to slow down, that's not what got them to their draft position. That's not what made them a first rounder. And there's some risk to not going with the athletes, but there's also a lot of value going with the guys that are technically sound, and I feel like that is going to be Latu, and that's a nice pick there for Minnesota, who need to get younger on their pass rush. Questions like what are they going to do with, are they going to sell high on Daniil Hunter? Could. He had a hell of a year, and maybe you get him out to a contender and get some more assets back, and Latu could be a successor there. Or hell, you just pair them together. That's pretty damn good. Pick 12 with the Denver Broncos, and I'm going to have them surprisingly go with J.J. McCarthy, just kind of following my ear on this one. Seems like J.J. McCarthy is a lock to be a first-round pick. He seems like he's a lock to be a top 15 pick. And I was like, who's going to pick him? Who's going to be confident enough, arrogant enough, that think that they can develop him? Because great athletic profile. A lot of things that look great for J.J. McCarthy. However, there's a lot of questions to be asked. Didn't have to, play the same type of game that the other top quarterbacks had to, where they had to carry their teams. That's going to be a knock against him. But I think someone like Sean Payton, who already came out, it seems like they're going to be shipping off Russell Wilson as soon as they can. They're going to be in the market for a quarterback, and I could see, out of all these teams that are quarterback needy, Sean Payton being like, I can work with J.J. McCarthy. I can make J.J. McCarthy, the 5-star recruit that he was coming to Michigan. Obviously, outstanding athlete. I think he's going to be one of those guys, kind of like Will Levis to a degree that, like, might look better with no pads on. Like, right, like when all these quarterbacks are thrown at the combine, you might be like, holy shit, McCarthy actually looks kind of decent. It's got to take one guy to fall in love with him. And for right now, for my money, I think that'll be Sean Payton. For better or for worse. I'm not a huge fan of McCarthy going in the first round. I wasn't a huge fan of Will Levis in the first round. I think Titan fans are pretty happy with Will Levis right now, and I think the same could be said for Denver. Pick 13, we have the Raiders. I think definitely in the pool of teams that could be aggressive to try to trade up for a quarterback. But I'm going to have them go with the Senior Bowl MVP, Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. And immediately Raider fans are going to be like, that's a wet fart. Toledo, he was the best corner at the Senior Bowl. He was, production-wise, the best corner in college football last year. He's going to test very well. Made Bruce Feldman's freak list. You got to scout the player, not the helmet on this one. And Quinyon Mitchell, absolute dog. And I think when he runs a 4.35, 4.33, something in that range, was he 6'1", 200 pounds? I'll tell you right now, as an Eagle fan, like, that would be one of my dream picks. Like, you know, don't take it as like, oh, C4 has a small school corner going to the Raiders. Clap. I would love Quinyon Mitchell at pick 22 if he's still on the board. I don't think that's going to be the case. He's an absolute dog in the secondary. I think the Raiders at this spot didn't get the quarterback. I don't know what, honestly, out of all the teams that need a quarterback, Raiders are probably the team that I have no idea what the hell they're going to do. But I think someone like Antonio Pierce is going to scout the player, not the helmet, and pound the table for Quinyon Mitchell. And that is going to be a dog in the secondary for the Vegas Raiders. New Orleans Saints up at pick 14. Ryan Ramczyk really made this pick easy. However, my pick, my second rated tackle right now, I'm going J.C. Latham from Alabama, the strongest player, arguably, in this year's draft class. I think for the Saints, for how their roster is built, for the replacement of Ramczyk, who was plug and play, top 10 right tackle, if not better, you weren't expecting the injuries and stuff like that. I don't know, it's a foregone conclusion he's retired, but that is a big question right now. And I think out of all these top tackles, I think it's very small gap between Fashanu, Fuaga, Latham. That's the next group there. I think Latham's the most pro-ready. He's the strongest. I think he has by far the least amount of weakness. Fuaga might not have the length. Fashanu has high ceiling, maybe not as pro-ready right now. So I think for my money, the safer tackle after Joe Alt is J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Pick 15, the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to have them go get Brock Bowers. This is actually who I had them taking last time. Not a popular pick right now, but I think getting a safety net, Brock Bowers, he's just a receiver. I don't think it's fair just to classify him strictly as a tight end. I'm throwing him in with the remaining wide receivers. And I think for the Colts, getting Anthony Richardson that support, getting him that safety net, build that. You have Bowers. I don't know what they're going to do with Pittman. Probably re-sign him. You got Josh Downs, who's awesome. Things are going to start looking good for that Colts. As long as Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. And I think right now I'm a little concerned as a Gator fan that his play style might not hold up in the NFL, which would suck because I'm pulling for him. But I think Brock Bowers would be an outstanding fit there for the Colts at pick 15. Shane Steichen, Shane Steichen got the best out of Dallas Goedert here in Philadelphia, right? Dallas Goedert was top 5 tight end. Injuries a little bit it's not been Dallas Goedert fell off since Shane Steichen got, but you saw what a good tight end could do in a Shane Steichen offense. I think that's exactly what you'd be able to get at Brock Bowers. Pick 16, we have the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm going to have them go with Byron Murphy, the D lineman from Texas. He was one of those guys a little bit late on. Heard good things. Heard, a lot of the year was Tavondre Sweat was the D tackle to know in Texas. But I was like, God damn, man, this guy here honestly reminds me a little bit of Fletcher Cox. If I had to throw a comp into the mix. And I could see him being the first true defensive tackle off the board. It's going to be close. I think Jer'Zhan Newton, also big-time dog. A lot of consistent production at Illinois. Should test well. But if you can get over the lack of length for Byron Murphy, hell of a player, man. Hell of a player. I'm a big fan. He was one of those guys, haven't seen a lot. We're still learning that whole process. But from what little that I did saw, I was like, I like this. I'm seeing why everyone else is starting to love this guy. And I think for Seattle, improving that defensive line, you're going to have a lot of options. You're happy with this board. If you can go with Newton, you can go with Darius Robinson, another guy that I think is going to be a lot higher drafted than 40th. Like, all those guys kind of fit that mold. That Darius Robinson more so be like a Michael Bennett if you're trying to equate him to a Seahawk of the past. But it's a new era for Seattle. I think Murphy on that defensive line would be a great get, given the board of players that are currently available. Jacksonville at 17. Maybe a slightly surprising pick, but I'm going to go with Fautanu, the offensive lineman, likely going to be a guard. I think guard interior of that offensive line is probably the biggest need. I'll just say this. This is a little bit of a casual, but it seems in line with what Jags fans want. I had Travis Etienne in fantasy football. And obviously Travis Etienne for a point in time in that season was insane. Went nuclear, got a lot of touchdowns. But anytime I'd watch the Jags game, that's kind of what I was always watching for the most part. I was like, casual or not, anytime I'd flip the Jags on, I want to see Etienne work because he's on my face. And holy shit, the amount of times that he was just running into a wall was insane. Like, I don't think it was a vision issue. I don't think it was a hit in the wrong lane issue for Travis Etienne. Every time he tried to run, nothing there. So I think if guard is truly the biggest need, Fautanu is absolutely a first-round prospect at that spot. You got Powers, Johnson, and Barton. There's a shot that, in terms of top 32 players, that Fautanu, Powers, Johnson, and Barton, all interior linemen, are in that pool. So I think if that is the biggest glaring need for the Jags, get a guy that has some flexibility, has some experience on tackle. Maybe that's what separates Fautanu because he can play multiple positions, can wear different hats depending on health of your rest of the offensive line. But I think, for the love of God, that brick wall that it seemed like the Jags were running into time and time again last year, trying to solve that at pick 17, that might be the way to go. Bengals at pick 18, they're running this one up. They're getting Olu Fashanu, the high ceiling tackle out of Penn State. 18 is pretty damn low. I think the fact that, that's the big faller right now. They trust in this board, if you're going off what other people's rankings are, seems to be just outside the top 10, depending on what scouting sheet you're kind of looking at. But I just think right now, maybe, kind of reminds me of Paris Johnson a little bit last year. I like Paris Johnson a little bit more than Fashanu, but a similar player where it's like what he's good at now is good enough to get him to start, but there still is a long way to go to complete his game, to get him where you really would love to feel comfortable with him as your first-round tackle prospect. But in the same regard, maybe even more than Joe Alt, if you're comparing who has the highest ceiling of the tackles in this year's class, Fashanu is a guy that arguably might have that role. So at pick 18 for the Bengals, finally getting Joe Burrow some protection. Fashanu, they would love that pick. Probably, maybe, arguably, of all the picks so far, the fan base that would be the happiest with my selection for them. The Rams at 19, I'm going to have them get Chop Robinson. Maybe a little rich. I think continuing to aid that pass rush. Right, you got Kobe Turner broke out. That was a value pick. Byron something that they got. Byron Young, Tennessee. He played well. But let's continue that. Chop Robinson is your Micah Parsons this year. Not saying he's Micah Parsons, but the connections, the freak athleticism, he's probably going to test very, very well. Doesn't really have the production to back up. Got to be a better pro than he was a college player. That's side by side, the pro report there of Chop Robinson and Micah Parsons. I think it's just going to take a defense that constantly can get the best out of their players, which is very much the Rams right now. I think Chop Robinson for the Rams, who have finally a rare first-round pick. I think the biggest need for the Rams is edge and or corner. There's options there as well. Nate Wiggins, DeJean, McKinstry at pick 19. But usually, if it's kind of close, when in doubt, you go pass rush. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 20, and I'm going to have them get Cooper DeJean, corner out of Iowa. I thought he might go back to school just coming off that injury, but outstanding player, very versatile. Can probably play every place in the secondary. Outside corner, slot corner, safety, free safety, deep safety, box safety. He can tackle, he can run, he can do punt returns. Hell of a player. I just feel like a versatile DB, that would be a guy that Mike Tomlin would be like, yep, I want that guy. I'm going to be able to mold that guy. That is the kind of guy that can fit in our defense. So that is a good get there for Pittsburgh. Because I'll tell you right now, sitting here at 22, I'm starting to see Quinyon Mitchell. I'd love him in Philly. He's off the board. Brock Bowers, he's off the board. Chop Robinson, he's off the board, especially with the Hassan Reddick rumors. And now Cooper DeJean, I'm getting a little bummed out here sitting at 22 as an Eagle fan. I'll say that. Pick 21, the Dolphins. I'm going to have them get Fuaga, the offensive tackle there out of Oregon State. I think the offensive line could arguably the biggest position to need for the Dolphins. Got to wait and see how their free agency falls out. I know they got some big, impactful free agents on the defensive side of the ball who could be leaving. But from what I watched last year of the Dolphins, I think getting the best player available on the offensive line is probably the way to go here. Could arguably look on the interior, but I'd be throwing at tackle. You got Taron Armstead, couldn't say how. Is he a guy that, are you counting on him to be back next year? You know what I'm saying? So, Fuaga, Mahler, powerful offensive tackle, kind of the similar mold, in my opinion, to J.C. Latham. He looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl as well. I remember during some of the workouts. got some clout on social media. So I think that'd be a nice little fit there for the Miami Dolphins. Philadelphia here at 22. I'm going to be honest with you. If this is real life and not me making my own mock draft, I think Philadelphia is running Amarius Mims up to the board. Because if it's not Fashanu for the highest ceiling of a tackle, I think Mims is right in that conversation with Altman. Just hasn't played a lot at Georgia. But if you're Philadelphia, knowing how Roseman likes to draft, you got to get your Lane Johnson successor. Mims would absolutely, even Tyler Guyton, either one of these tackles would definitely fit that billing of your Lane Johnson successor. But for me and my money, you got to get Bradbury out of there. You haven't seen enough out of, you like to hope that like Keely Ringo can continue to develop. You haven't seen enough though to not add in the corner room. I would love Philadelphia right now, honestly, to explore corner and free agency. If Jalen Johnson hits the open market, L'Jarius Sneed hits the open market. But if that's a ways away, I think right now I'd go Nate Wiggins. Height, weight, speed seems pretty much, he is absolutely ticks all the boxes of a first-round corner. And in Philadelphia, you can learn from Darius Slay for the time being. And you just get, like, the biggest issue right now with the Eagles, if you look at it across the board, even if they trade Hassan Reddick, I think is you got to replace Bradbury. You got to upgrade James Bradbury. He was a complete and utter liability. And I think to do so, Nate Wiggins still on the board at 22. That is your best shot at doing that. Pick 23 with the Houston Texans. I'm going to get Jerzon Newton, defensive tackle out of Illinois. Versatile defensive lineman, can give you some pass rush help. And I think that is definitely DeMeco Ryans pound the table saying, hey, can we invest please on the defense again here in the first round? Our offense looked pretty damn good. And they get arguably the BPA left on the defensive side of the ball. 24 with the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm going to have them get Amarius Mims, offensive tackle from Georgia. Don't know what they're doing with Tyler Smith. Terrence Steele looked burnt toast after getting paid. So I think tackle, offensive line, can't go wrong there. It really does seem like it's BPA on the offensive line, wide receiver, or secondary. That's what happens with Stephon Gilmore if he returns. But I think Amarius Mims having such a high ceiling is going to be enough for Jerry Jones to say, yeah, let's get a cost-efficient offensive line here put together so that we can pay Dak Prescott even more money. Which is awesome. Do that, please. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to have them get Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner from Alabama. I'm going to be honest. Knowing what I know about Green Bay and knowing what Jair Alexander's last couple months there, like, if I had to just throw it, like right now, Patrick Surtain's kind of the hot name. The Coug could potentially get traded. I could see them getting rid of Jair. I don't know why. I'm just throwing that out there from what I've seen from an outside perspective. No idea. Maybe he's absolutely untouchable for Green Bay. But if I'm looking around at star players that could surprisingly be on the move, and I didn't expect Hassan Reddick, even though Hassan Reddick came out and said he wanted to get paid more last offseason, I think Jair Alexander would be like high on my board of like superstars that for somehow, some way, shockingly are on the move. But even if he stays there, I do think corner is a big need here for Green Bay. Eric Stokes, just what's going on there, right? So something like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who for a lot of really college football season was corner one in this year's draft class. A lot of people aren't expecting him to test particularly well. Could fall a little bit. I still think he's a first-round corner, absolutely. I think he's an underrated tackler. I love how physical he is. I think that'd be a good get there for the Green Bay Packer defense that played pretty damn well late in the season last year. We have Tampa Bay up now at 26. And because it looks, this is going to be almost, I'm just saying, under the assumption that Mike Evans is going to dip. Got to get a wide receiver, so we get a legit first-rounder in Brian Thomas Jr., deep threat. A lot of comparisons to DJ Chark. LSU, height, weight, speed. That's what he's going to do. But for a deep threat, that's a big-time playmaker right there. Especially you keep Baker Mayfield. Cannon of an arm. Got to replace Mike Evans. Can't just go Chris Godwin. And I think that would be, you got Trey Palmer. Gives you a little bit of juice there. But let's go all in there on the juice. So this is kind of on the assumption that Mike Evans is going to go somewhere else. You need to get younger at the wide receiver room. Seems like a popular pick right now amongst Buck fans to prepare for life beyond Mike Evans. End of an era. So that is why we're grabbing them a wide receiver at 26. Arizona back on the clock at 27. And I'm going to have them get Tyler Guyton at tackle. Seems like DJ Humphries could be a cut. Could be getting ready to move on. So you slide Paris why do I keep saying Paris Campbell? Paris Johnson. Come on, I know this. Goddamn Cardinals fans. Like, take Paris Johnson, move him to left tackle. Tyler Guyton, developmental right tackle. And assuming they all pan out, which they probably should, there you go. You're laughing. You got two very cheap, high ceiling, should be sooner than later, high playing offensive tackles on Kyler Murray's gigantic contract. That's kind of how you make all the pieces work there. And I think doubling up on the offense, Marvin Harrison, Tyler Guyton, it's a good way. I don't know if Jonathan Gannon, defensive-minded head coach, is going to be able to get any pull and say, hey, can we get a little bit on the defense here? But I think that would be an absolute win, landing those two players in the first round for the Cardinals. Pick 28, we have the Buffalo Bills. and I'm going to have them get Darius Robinson, D lineman from Mizzou. If Quinyon, I mean, maybe the biggest winner of the Senior Bowl, and like that is absolutely something that holds weight. As much as that's just casual, like who did good at the Senior Bowl? It's very rare outside of quarterbacks that players stand out in the Senior Bowl and don't have their draft stock skyrocket. He had a career year at Mizzou, absolute dog. Seems like a Sean McDermott defender. And I think when you're looking at the Buffalo Bills, you can make the argument that D-line, be it edge and or defensive tackle in it. Again, my comp for him, it kind of reminds me of Michael Bennett. You get a little bit of versatility of both. Von Miller, AJ Epineza, like these guys here on the, I think you get a very versatile edge rusher that absolutely is a Sean McDermott guy there at pick 28. Wide receiver's a popular pick here for the Bills. Safety, I don't know if there's value at safety right now over getting a D lineman at wide receiver, unless you really like Keon Coleman, because they're probably going to have to replace Gabe Davis, maybe, right? I don't know. I think we go with the gigantic riser from the Senior Bowl, in my opinion, who can play and wear a lot of hats on that defensive line. Detroit at pick 29. Maybe a hot take here, but I have them going to T'Vondre Sweat. I think D tackle out of all the spots here is the most reasonable. Braylon Trice, sure, edge rusher, but I think on that defensive line, Sweat at 350 pounds. We saw flashes of what Jordan Davis could do this year. Watch Jordan Davis' game against Buffalo in overtime. We just have a absolute disgusting freak at D tackle that can space eat, that can make everyone else's life. And I was just thinking for the Detroit Lions, Sweat and Lynn McNeil on the interior is terrifying. You have that with Aiden Hutchinson. I think that is the best pick at 29 for the Detroit Lions defensive line as a whole. That's why I made the move. Maybe not awesome value getting a run defender, but it's at 29. I feel like if you're going to get one at 29, it's not that expensive, not that much of a reach. I'm sure Detroit Lions fans will hate this, but I think for me, just looking at where the Detroit Lions could get best on the defensive side of the ball, I have Sweat there at 29. Baltimore at 30. I'm going to have them get Keon Coleman at wide receiver. I think he complements what they have there in the wide receiver room. You don't have a guy with that skill set. Elite jump ball, maybe some separation concerns, but he's so good at the jump ball. Little Mike Williams to his game, right? Might not be able to make guys miss his route running, get free off route running, but just throw it up and he'll make ridiculous athlete. This guy was, I believe, a big-time basketball star, Michigan State. Jump ball, highlight reel, good grabs. I think that is it's a little bit of a luxury pick for Baltimore, but I do think wide receiver is something they certainly need to address. Could look at corner. I just did love the corners that are available. So we went with Keon Coleman, who hopefully does test pretty well. I think he definitely needs to test well, maybe even slightly better than expected to secure that first-round status. But I'm a fan of his game. I love the exciting, but it's certainly a little bit of that boomer bust. Quentin Johnson, maybe wide receiver of this year's draft class. San Francisco at pick 31. I'm going to have them go Jackson Powers Johnson on the interior of that offensive line. Brendel, their current starting center, was below average, and he's 32. Let's go get an absolute hoss. 330-pound elite power in this center. Stylistically, I haven't watched a whole lot, but I personally see a little bit of Frank Ragnow when he was coming out of Arkansas. And you can never not prioritize the offensive line there in San Francisco. I think they had to go best offensive lineman available. I think Graham Barton also can make some sense because he's a little more versatile. Barton's played everywhere. You can play guard, tackle, center. Maybe that will have him go ahead of Powers Johnson. But Powers Johnson seems to be almost consensus right now going in the first round. I think that's some solid value there for the Niners, who could always improve their offensive line. And then at pick 32, the Kansas City Chiefs. Finishing out our mock draft, I have them going Jordan Morgan, the 6'7" tackle out of Arizona, because Donovan Smith is garbage. That's all I got for you. I'm shocked they want to see Donovan Smith, one of the worst tackles I've seen. Kudos to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes for being able to get that done. Go get Jordan Morgan. There is your future right tackle. So there you go, guys. That is a fun little post-Super Bowl mock draft. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. Do you love my pick for your team? Do you hate my pick for your team? Everything is encouraged because every time we do this mock draft, I always kind of see. Even a couple of these picks were influenced by some of the feedback that I got on my last mock draft. So let me know in the comment section below. As always, first time stopping by, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's your boy C4. Say peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.